everyone, and welcome back to my channel. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad to have you. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button before you head out, as I do a lot of Atlanta videos, which you guys seem to really enjoy. So today I'm going to be talking about what it really costs to live in Atlanta, and I think that you guys will really enjoy this video. My pros and cons of Atlanta video has been doing really well for a long time. It's like staying up in my top 10, and pretty much all of my Atlanta vlogs do relatively well, depending on what area I am talking about. So I thought that you all would enjoy this, especially if you're considering moving here, because I feel like a lot of people think that Atlanta is a lot more expensive than it really is, whereas I feel like it is relatively the same as other cities I've lived in the past. So I just wanted to go into detail with you guys and tell you all some of the things that you should probably be wary of before moving to Atlanta, and some of the costs that I didn't think about before I moved here, and I hope that you all enjoy. So just a little disclaimer on me. I just moved here. We're going on our second year here, and before this we lived in Miami and Orlando, so those are two other bigger cities. So I'm gonna kind of compare some of the prices to other cities I've lived in, and hopefully that will help you all. And I just wanted to put that in there because some of the things that I'm gonna be talking about we don't have in Florida. If you're from another state, you might already have some of these charges, and I'm gonna explain that all in detail in the future. But please be sure, guys, to give this video a thumbs up, and let's jump into the video. So I'm not gonna give like a total at the end of how much I spend, because of the fact that a lot of these charges are subjective. That's the word I'm looking for. So a lot of them I'm talking about, like parking rates. I just don't want to give you a total at the end, because you know that could vary depending on how often you're going out, if you have a car, blah blah blah, which I'm going to be talking about with each of these different totals. But basically I wanted to say that we live about 15 minutes outside of downtown Atlanta if there's no traffic. We live in a place called Chamblee, which is right on the edge of Dunwoody in Georgia, and I work in Dunwoody. So yeah, basically that's just a little disclaimer. I will say that in bills in total every month we spend about $2,500, and I'm going to talk about some of those specific bills here. But some things that I'm going to be talking about are once a year charges, or depending on how often you go out, charges. Why can't I talk today? So hopefully this video helps you guys. So first off, of course, probably the biggest charge ever is rent. So like I said, we live about 15 minutes outside of downtown Atlanta, and we pay about $1,400 for our apartment. I believe this apartment is 850 square feet. And I looked up some of the apartments in downtown Atlanta, most notably the Pond City flats, which are right above Pond City markets, because those are very hot commodity. And I found out that the cheapest is about $1,550 to $1,600 for a studio apartment, which is about 500 to 600 square feet. So it definitely gets a little bit of a jump as soon as you head into more downtown and midtown areas. It really depends on where you want to live. I have friends that live in midtown and absolutely love it, and I have other friends who live there and absolutely hate it. So it really just depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for a place where you can go out late at night, it's a great place to be, because all the places are open later in midtown or downtown. And if you are looking for somewhere very safe and family friendly, maybe your best option is not midtown or downtown. I'm just throwing it out there. Yeah, it really depends on what you're looking for. And if you did want to move to midtown or downtown, honestly, if you take the cost, like the extra cost, so say from $1,400 where I live to $1,600 in downtown, so that's an extra $200 a month. But think about the fact if you don't have a car because you're using public transportation, and think about the fact that if you are not using gas money, paying insurance, a car payment, all that stuff, it might actually end up being cheaper to live in downtown depending on your lifestyle and your budget. So it just depends. Of course, if you want a road trip every weekend or go to the mountains of Georgia to hike every weekend, you're probably going to want a car, because Ubers tend to get very expensive. Speaking of that, I wanted to talk about transportation. So the public transportation system in Atlanta is the MARTA. I think it is the best public transportation system out of anywhere I've ever lived. I hope that one day Orlando adopts this system, because the MARTA takes you literally everywhere. It takes you straight to the Falcons. Why can't I think of, no, not the Falcons. What's the basketball team? We just went to a basketball game. I can't think of the name. The Hawks. It takes you straight to the Hawks Stadium, which is right next to the Falcons Stadium. It takes you to the CNN Center. Those are all like at the same stop. It takes you straight to the aquarium. It takes you literally everywhere. It takes you straight to my job in Dunwoody. It takes you all around the different suburb areas. It is the best public transportation system ever, and I think if Orlando adopted that and they had it going from Disney, Universal, the airport, UCF, the soccer stadium, downtown, that would be so amazing, because not only is public transportation amazing if you don't have a car, but it's also super amazing if you do have a car but you're trying to get to an event, which is exactly what we did when we went to the Hawks game. Because parking, I'm going to talk about in a second, but parking is super expensive in Atlanta. So taking the MARTA and not paying for parking and also not having to get stuck in traffic is literally the best thing ever. And it would be so cool if they had that in Orlando, because I could go to my UCF football game and I wouldn't have to get stuck in traffic and I wouldn't have to pay for parking, or I could go to the airport and not have to pay to park my car. And she's so cute. And so I find it to be a very valuable resource, the MARTA system. The MARTA is a $5 round trip, so it's $2.50 one way. I have friends who use this to get to my job because they live in Midtown and then they work in Dunwoody, so they take it every day. And I did the math, so if you are working 5 days a week and you are paying $5 for the MARTA both ways, and you are doing this for a whole month, it would be $100 a month, which is honestly not that bad considering my car payment, my insurance, my gas is well over that amount of money. Definitely a good option. I'm a big fan of the MARTA, like a big fan. You're going to meet some insane people. I am a changed person after my first time riding the MARTA, but it's worth it for the cost to listen to the crazy screaming people, to walk past spotty fluids on the floor. It sounds disgusting, but it is worth the trip. So that brings me to gas. So I know gas is different depending on where you live. Honestly, Atlanta has been pretty much the cheapest place I've ever lived, including when I used to live in a place called Stuart, Florida, which is on the east coast of Florida, which you would think that the coast was cheaper because they aren't factoring in costs of getting it to the middle of the state. But actually living in Atlanta, the gas has been so cheap, and living in Orlando, the gas is super cheap as well. So I don't know what it is about the coast, but yeah, so right now, of course, we're in the coronavirus pandemic, so gas is like $1.90 or something, which is exceptionally cheap. And before it started, I think gas was around $2.40 around that in the year that we lived here, so it really was not that expensive, considering that when I go to my mom's house in Stuart or my dad's house in Miami, it's like pretty close to like $2.60, $2.70, upwards to $3. So it definitely is pretty cheap here. And the amount of gas you use really just depends on what you like to do. For example, we like to go places on the weekend. We like to go to downtown. We like to explore Georgia. But I really only, besides that, take my car to work. And my job is 10 minutes away, so it's not a very far drive. So I only get gas about once a month. So my gas total is about $30 a month. So it's really not that bad at all, I would say. Next thing on transportation is you have to pay to park everywhere. I hate that about downtown Atlanta. Like, you cannot find free parking anywhere, practically anywhere. And parking is pretty expensive, especially if you are in downtown, like by Olympic Park, or you know, all those places in downtown. Like we went to the Chris Kindle Market in November and we paid $20 to park, which is absolutely insane to me. And they have like these rules where if like you get there before 6 o'clock, it's a little bit of a cheaper rate. It's like $10. But if you're just going there to get an ice cream sandwich like we did one time, $10 is absolutely outrageous to pay for parking. So that's why I've started using the MARTA, and I hope to use the MARTA more once things start opening up, because parking is an absolutely insane cost when it comes to downtown and midtown Atlanta. Other bills that go with living here, so electricity. in the winter, so I think from about like September, October to literally like April of this year, we did not use the air conditioner, and it saved us so much money. Whereas in Florida, that you can't really do that because the winters do not get that cold, so they cannot heat up your apartment, or cool down your apartment, I should say. So yeah, we didn't use air conditioning, and we didn't really use the heater. I think we used the heater maybe once or twice when it was like way too cold. But that saved us so much money. We were only paying like $50 to $60 a month for electricity, which is so cheap, which I'm now going to tell you our bill for July, which was $140, because of the fact that it is very warm and toasty outside, so the air conditioning is working double time to keep our apartment cool. And that is with only turning on our air conditioning. We turn it on around 7 o'clock at night and run it until we wake up around like 10 or 11 in the morning. So it's really not that bad, because basically the whole time during the day it is off, so that's supposed to save us money, but it still ends up being a lot when just from running it at night. So that's definitely something to factor in, as well as the cost of gas. So in Florida we don't have gas, but in Georgia they do have gas. So gas would be a separate bill from the electricity. We don't really have it here. We don't have it in this apartment. And I think if you have a more newer apartment, you probably won't have a gas bill. But if you have a house, I think you have to pay a gas bill, because a lot of things run on gas in Georgia, which I was not prepared for. So just keep that in mind, that you might have to pay electricity as well as gas if you move to Georgia, which might be the same in your state or where you live now, but it just was not the same for me from moving from Florida. Next is food. So food, it really depends on where you go, to be honest, and it depends on what you think is cheap and what you think is not cheap. At the restaurant that I work in, it is common for a couple to spend about $100 if they each get 2 drinks and an entree, which I don't think is that bad. I think $100 is pretty reasonable for a date night. But I did look up the cost of a few different restaurants. So for example, Vortex, which is a very popular burger and sandwich place here in Atlanta, I looked up what their food costs. So it costs less than $15 for a sandwich with a side, which I think is not bad at all. But you also have to remember that you're going to be paying for parking most likely if you're going to these places. So say $10 for parking, so you add that to your sandwich. So that ends up being like $25 for a sandwich just to park and go in and get it. So that's why parking drives me crazy here. But the food is not that bad in my opinion. And I wanted to talk about events as well, because I went to see Hello Dolly at the Fox Theater. I saw an evening of conversation with Julie Andrews at the Cobb Energy Performing Arts Center, I think is what it's called. And then we saw a game at the Hawks Arena. So I just wanted to say that the prices are probably the best that I've ever seen for an event center. Maybe that's because I used to go to the theme parks all the time, where it's literally $3 for a bottle of water, and the Dolphins games in Miami, those can be pretty expensive when it comes to food, where you're paying like $15 for a pretzel and a water. I was very pleasantly surprised by all of these places being extraordinarily cheap. Like when we went to the Hawks game, I think I might have talked about it in my vlog, but when we went to the Hawks game, we did not spend that much money. I think water was like $1, $1.50, and pizza was like $2 a slice, which is just insane to me. So I really appreciate that the prices were lower for that, especially because I know people probably had to pay for parking, but not I, because I took the MARTA, because that is the best thing to do. Now we're going to talk about annual charges, and then we're pretty much gonna wrap up the video, because I think this is like all that I can really think of that specifically applies to Atlanta. So the first one is state income tax. So this one is a tricky one, because there's no set number of how much the state income tax really costs, or like the percentage of it that comes out of your income, because higher earners pay higher taxes in the state of Georgia. So it depends on how much money you're making, the percentage that's taken out of your income. So for example, last year I paid about, in federal and state, I paid about 10% of my income towards taxes, which was quite a bit of money, for sure. So I just wanted to put that warning out there because when I lived in Florida, we did not have state income tax, so I did not pay that much in taxes. Also, as a waitress and a bartender, in Florida, I made like $5.20 or something like that an hour plus tips, so make sure you're tipping when you go out to eat. And in Georgia, I make $2.13 an hour, literally $2 an hour. So that is why tipping is so important and tipping culture is so important. But basically, yeah, in Florida, that $5 a day, or $5 an hour, sorry, $5 an hour went towards my taxes, so I usually got a tax return back. But now only making $2.13 a day, which is pretty much going towards my insurance, I ended up paying quite a hefty bill for my taxes. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that taxes can be quite a hefty fee. And speaking of taxes, state income taxes are not the only taxes that Georgia has. We also have the ad valorem tax, which is when you get a new car or when you move here with your old car and you're registering your car, you have to pay an insane amount of money. So last year for my 2004 Honda CR-V, when we moved here, I paid like $200 to register it. And then it does pay off in the long run if you're here for a long time, because after that, every year your re-registration fee is only like $20. Whereas in Florida, we don't have ad valorem, but every year our registration is like $50, I think, $50, somewhere around there. Since we're moving in February, I did not want to get a car, but of course, as you probably know if you are on my Instagram, I did buy a car this week, and I was not looking forward to it because I knew that I was going to have to pay an exceptional amount of ad valorem taxes, and it was an exceptional amount of ad valorem taxes. And if we had been closer to our moving date, I definitely would not have bought a car now. Basically, the reason that I did buy a car was because I calculated the cost of taking an Uber to work until we move, and it was about 4 times the amount of what I would pay just for the ad valorem, so I just decided to get the car. But it does suck because knowing that I'm not going to need to re-register it next year and, you know, get the $20 discount, I'm literally going to have to pay to register it again when I move to my new state. So yeah, ad valorem taxes are definitely pretty hefty. If you want to know how much your car is going to cost, you can go to the website and they have a little calculator that you can use. And yeah, it's pretty expensive for my old car having to pay that much money. Also, as you register your car every year, you also have to do an emissions test, but that's super cheap. It's like $15 for the emissions test, and I actually am really grateful that Georgia does the emissions test because I'm grateful that I'm driving in a state that cares about your car emitting disgusting things into the environment. Whereas in Florida, a lot of the times you'll be at a stoplight and you'll see somebody's car like exuding disgusting chemicals into the atmosphere. So it is nice to know that people have to be responsible for their cars here, even if it ends up being an extra $15 every time you register your car. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that it answered some questions for you. If you have any other questions about different costs, please be sure to leave them in the comments down below. I'd be happy to answer them for you. And anyway guys, I hope that you're having a wonderful week, and I'll see you on Thursday with a new vlog. Bye guys!